everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails, the weekly podcast that helps you grow your business, improve your life, and enjoy yourself along the way. I'm your host, Allan Langer, and every week we try to bring you the best thought leaders, the best business leaders, and the best minds out there to help you succeed in business and in life. So sit back, relax, grab your pad, your pen, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy the next episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. This is your host, Allan Langer. Episode, you ready for this? 49. We are almost at 50. We are at episode 49, and I've got someone from way across the world for tonight's episode, from Australia. And we're going to get to Gina in a minute. But before we get to Gina, just a couple of housekeeping notes. The website is marketingandsalespodcast.com. Don't forget to send in your question to the Ask Allan segment. If you send in a question and we read it on the air during the show, you get a signed autographed copy of my book. We've got a great question up, a great question coming up. It's a little late in the evening for me tonight, from Ted in Birmingham, Alabama, for our guests later. So we're going to get to that, but Ted is getting a free copy of my book. So without further delay, I want to introduce someone I just met, but we hit it off really quickly. She's very cool. Her name is Gina. She calls herself GINA Ballarina, but her name is GINA BALARIN. And she's an awesome everything marketing person. She owns her own marketing agency called Verballistics. She started that about 5 years ago. She's a TEDx speaker. She's a keynote speaker, and she's also a member of the Professional Speaker Association. So she not only has public speaking under her belt, she's marketing, all kinds of stuff. Gina, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here tonight.
Allan, it's great to be chatting with you. And let's not forget she's an author as well. This handy little book.
Yes.
Staple. There we go. The Secret Army. Leadership, Marketing,
Army, yep.
And the Power of People. So forgive the book plug, but I'm like, hey, you know what? If someone wants a free copy of this, feel free to reach out to me and tell me, oh my goodness, this chat was so amazing. Gina, I want a free copy, and we'll see what we can do.
Well, when the show comes out, there will be in the show notes. There'll be a link to Gina's book. There'll be a link to how to get in touch with her on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But yes, her book is The Secret Army: Leadership, Marketing, and the Power of People. And your agency says it's a boutique marketing agency. So before you tell me what that means, I want you to tell everyone about Gina. Tell us why you're awesome and how you got to where you are today.
It's a really difficult question to answer when someone sets you up like that. First of all, am I really awesome? And how do I tell people why I'm awesome? I mean, I can tell them what I've done. I can tell them where I am, but I can't.
Well, that'll define why you're awesome.
So I am originally a South African with a British passport living in Australia.
Okay.
You can call me a little bit of a globe trotter. I have lived on 3 different continents, and I've worked in communications across all 3 of those continents. And I've worked in marketing across all 3 continents, but I didn't always know I was working in marketing. In fact, it was only when I became aware of the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK and thought, wait, hang on, what's this thing? Do I need to be studying marketing like as a formal thing rather than just doing it every day? That I was like, oh, you mean the thing I've already been doing for the last 4 years? That's marketing? Oh, I didn't know that.
Look at that.
Which is quite ironic. And today I'm actually a member of the board of the Chartered Institute of Marketing.
Wow.
So it's been an interesting journey with them. But it's also meant that through that journey, I've always seen it through the eye of a marketing content writer. Now, I was writing, and making up stories from the moment that I was talking and walking pretty much. And I have always loved helping people engage in a story. And the irony is that most marketers see themselves in like one specific marketing role. Even marketing generalists tend to be biased towards something. I'm biased towards content writing. But marketing is this incredibly diverse field where you can pick almost any specialism within the marketing field and become an expert at that particular niche. So you get marketers who are search engine optimization experts. You get marketers who are content writers only. You get marketers who are great planners. And that's what they do for marketing agencies. They plan stuff. And the beautiful thing is everyone can be a marketer because we're engaged in the sharing and exchange of hopefully meaningful communications between our company and our prospective buyers. But that doesn't mean that marketing is actually done right a lot of the time. And that is the problem that a lot of people outside of marketing have. And that's why the perception of marketers is pretty sucky.
Yeah. And I want to get into, there's a segue there, but I totally forgot before we get into deeper, you are on Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. So you have to share with the audience what you have. It looks like a delicious glass of white wine. Is that what that is?
It is indeed. It's a Chablis. What are you drinking?
I have, so this looks like milk with ice in it. It's actually not. It's a delicious called Bourbon Cream. Buffalo Trace, which is an American whiskey company, makes a cream. It's not like a Bailey's. Bailey's is way too sweet. It's just delicious. It's like eggnog, and you can only have one glass because it's a little too much. But I saw it in the fridge. I'm like, I'm having that tonight. So here's a virtual cheers to you.
Cheers.
Right up to the camera. Cheers, and thank you again for being on the show. There we go. Yes, cheers to the audience.
I thought it was a White Russian there for a second.
Yeah, right. Take me back to my high school days. White Russian, my goodness. I need some Kahlua for that.
Yeah, that's true. It's not quite brown enough for it, or creamy colored enough for the White Russian. Yeah.
So you mentioned the perception of marketers being sucky. And I can easily say from the sales side, the perception of salesmen is salespeople is sucky, maybe even suckier. And you're right. It's from a client standpoint, the reputations for both are not great. And then the reputation for both working together is not great. So twofold question. What do you have to do as a marketer to dispel that perception? And then how do you work together with sales better? I know that's two completely different questions, but I figured I'd ask them both at one time because that's the kind of guy I am.
Let's begin with explaining why the concept of marketing and sales is so sucky, or at least some evidence to explain this.
Yes.
A few years ago, Hubspot did an analysis with 1,000 people to look at the perceptions of sales and marketing and various other professionals. Of course, you'd expect that people like doctors and firefighters were way up at the top of the trustworthiness scale. And you'd expect that salespeople, marketers, insurance salesmen, car salesmen were way down the bottom. What ended up happening, though, was that actually people trust baristas more than they trust marketers.
I saw that. I actually saw that. Yes. The guy who makes your coffee, you trust more than a marketing or a salesperson.
Yeah. I love it and hate it at the same time, but I can understand it. So the first part of your question was, how do you get people to trust marketing more? Well, there are two ways of doing this. You get people to trust marketing more by giving them marketing that they actually want to listen to. And that means you have to understand what you're actually, not what you're trying to sell to people. No, you have to go the other way around. You have to understand what their needs are, what they want from your product. There's no point in creating a product or indeed a service, providing a service, if no one wants to buy what you have to sell. And you can understand that, like, we're human, we think about ourselves first more often than not. We think about our needs and we turn that into a product. We turn that into a solution. So we go, well, if I want this, then surely everyone else wants this. But unfortunately, the answer is often, well, do you know that everyone wants this? Who wants this? Why do they want this? What are they going to do with this? So in order to improve the reputation of marketing, we have to first and foremost listen with our heads and our ears, but we also have to listen with our hearts. And that means that there is a big place for empathy in marketing that hasn't always been there. And there is a big role for listening to people first and creating marketing second, and also being brave enough to ask questions of your customers, especially if you're afraid you're going to get honest answers, because those honest answers aren't always comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
The next part of your question is how do you actually get sales and marketing to work together? And oh my goodness, we're going to need more than one glass of wine.
I'm thinking that's a question for just one entire podcast. But
yeah, it is. But let's begin with something I wrote in The Secret Army. And it was a chapter on relationship counseling for sales and marketing. So
really, I like that. So like couples counseling for sales and marketing. I like that.
It was exactly like that. And it's a blog post I wrote right when I was starting to realize that sales and marketers they're kind of the yin and yang of the relationship, but also that we can both achieve if we focus on a goal that connects us rather than divides us.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a perception that salespeople were arrogant and pushy, and they didn't really care much about me. All they cared about was results. They didn't see any value in the marketing I was creating, and they just we couldn't coexist. And I was wrong. I only discovered I was wrong when I met a salesperson who said to me, please help me. I need to reach this audience. I know you can do some good marketing. Help me create stuff specifically for my audience so that we can talk to them in a way that they understand what I'm trying to sell them. It's like, sorry, what?
That's a smart salesperson.
You're actually asking me for help? Are you okay? You spent too much time in the sun recently. No, he asked. And so I answered. And off the back of that, originally it was a blog post was created called Relationship Counseling for Sales and Marketing. And effectively, the answers in there summarized this. When relationships are looked at from both the other person's perspective, we can start to see what they need, just like as in a marriage. You can assume that your wife wants you to unpack the dishwasher. Well, to be fair, who doesn't want their partner to unpack the dishwasher, right? But it might be that actually she doesn't want you to pack the dishwasher because she'd actually prefer to hand wash some of those very expensive glasses that shouldn't go in the dishwasher. So by doing a good deed, which marketers would be producing content, which is their good deed for sales, that they haven't asked, you're actually making the relationship worse. So the great secret of success to create effective collaboration between sales and marketing is to understand what do you both want. And there's a fairly easy way of answering that question. It is actually what's going to serve your customers. And how are you going to help your customers understand that what you're selling is actually going to help them solve their problems? Now, it's not rocket science, but it's amazing how hard it is to answer that question. And the bigger organizations tend to get, the harder it is often for them to go back to that essence of who are our customers? What are we trying to sell them in a context that means how are we trying to help them? And that's what great marketing does. And that's what great sales does as well, is you start by going, here's the problem we're trying to solve. What do they need to help them solve this problem? How can we understand the journey that they're going through to solve this problem? How can we be part of that journey? What can we provide that is genuinely going to be what I call irate, interesting, relevant, appropriate, timely, entertaining, engaging, or educating? And then produce the marketing that can help them use that. Because then sales loves marketing because we're actually doing what helps them make their sales job easier.
It's fascinating that you're talking about this because I spent a lot of time. I've been in corporate jobs. I spent many, many years selling windows, in home. And the company I was with was a pretty gigantic company, and they had a call center to take in the calls from all the marketing and all the ads they produced. But it was instead of really finding ideal customers, they just cast a gigantic net, and the reps went out all over the place. 50% of the time or more, you were not in front of the ideal customer. And so all the reps were just complaining about the leads. The leads suck. Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, the leads are weak. It's just that's what sales does. Well, what I started doing was I would go to an appointment, and it was a terrible appointment, or the person in the house would say, well, the girl on the phone said this, this, and this, and I'd write it down, and I'd get back in the car and I'd call the director of the call center. I'm like, you may need to check this call. He just said that the girl on the phone said our windows are $200. the windows were $2,000. And I tell you, when I first did that, he was floored because he's like, I've never, ever been called by a rep who gave me feedback from the field. He goes, you know how valuable this is right now? So I would do it 3 or 4 times a week, just say, this was a great lead. Whoever made this appointment, tell them great job. And they I was endeared by the marketing department because I was doing that. And every salesperson should do that.
I agree. And tools and tactics that people are using to be able to identify great leads and to combine a sales and marketing into what Dan Tyre from HubSpot calls smarketing is very evolved. And I think, but it can also be divisive. So when you look at the relationship between marketing and sales, you have gazillions of tools you can use to help track the progression of a lead. But that can often be divisive more than cohesive. If you look at a series of leads on a dashboard and you see that one part is not converting to the other, then the guilt game and the blame game starts.
Right.
And actually, that is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. The much bigger problem is, did sales and marketing ever actually sit down and go, what is a lead? Or what is a good lead? And if you haven't agreed to those criteria and characteristics, this lead sucked, sales says, and market says, but this was an excellent lead. We'll continue forever.
Let me ask you a question on the sucky leads versus, the good leads, because I think sucky leads happen because the C-level folks or the owners of the business tell the marketing people, we need 1,000 leads a month. That's it. We need 1,000 leads a month. So what are they going to do? They're going to get 1,000 leads a month, no matter how good or bad they are. And rather than saying, well, you know what? If we get 500 of these leads, the sales team is probably going to close 50% of these. We're sending them 1,000 leads where 500 really suck. That's why their closing percentage is 25%. So how much is that the problem where it's just a numbers game with marketing and leads generation?
You've just answered your own question, essentially. It is a question of, firstly, what are people focusing on? Secondly, how do they define lead? Thirdly, where does that lead sit in the progression funnel? And fourthly, what are the progression conversion rates? Now, marketers historically have sat at the top of the funnel, right? Their job is to bring the leads in. Sales have sat at the bottom of the funnel. Their job is to get the drips coming out of the bottom of the funnel. But it's not a funnel, it's more like a sieve, right? In fact, it's more like a bucket that you've drilled holes in all over the place, and you're lucky if you get one drip out the bottom, unless, and this is the big ask, unless you start filling the stuff at the top with stuff that is chunky. It's really hard to fill your bucket with rocks and not have something rock-shaped drop out of the bottom if you don't actually, if you know what your rock is. And there's actually a term in content marketing, big rock content. Like if you're filling your marketing stuff with big rock content that is super valuable, well, then it means that it's more likely to convert because you're adding value at each stage of that journey. I had a great manager a few years ago who, when she took on a more senior role, she got the role by effectively saying to the head of sales, I'm not going to fix your number of things in the top of the funnel. What I'm going to do is I'm going to improve your conversion rate. And I think she made it as simple as, I'm going to increase your conversion rate at this stage of the funnel by 5%, and I will double your revenue. Like, what's not to love, right?
Wow.
Because marketers don't have to do more. They don't have to keep spreading news. What they can do is they can be far more focused and targeted. And because of those conversations between sales and marketing in an honest, open, authentic, like give and take feedback, no, this doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? This is why it doesn't work. Okay, we get it. We'll do this instead kind of way. What ended up happening is that marketing started using different tactics. And using different tactics and different types of content meant that they were then able to attract and engage different types of people. But you're right, fundamentally, Allan, at the end of the day, if business owners are more focused on revenue and they think that just expecting more from marketing is going to miraculously make their business better, they're going to resort to tactics that will continue to have sales and marketing less trustworthy than coffee baristas.
And I think, especially today, that path is going to get very, very slippery, and some of these companies are going to fall off the cliff if they keep that. Like I know 5 right off the top of my head that they're, when you look at their numbers, they're a very successful company, but their conversion rate is 28% on the sales side. They're selling 28 out of 100 leads. So there are 72 customers that they visited out of 100 that said no. That's going to come back to bite them in bad reviews and how you're leaving the customers feeling. And that's where that long-term thought process is not these owners are not seeing that. And I'm thinking that the companies that are thinking like you, let's really niche this down and find our ideal customer and get these big rocks are the ones that are going to, rise to the top.
Something else that Dan Tyre says is the riches are in the niches. Now, personally, I pronounce it niche, so it doesn't rhyme quite as nicely for me.
The riches are in the
niches. Are in the niches, but the point stands. And I agree with you that niching is often good. In fact, it's almost essential, especially in the small business world, because we don't have the time and the capacity as business owners to go out and reach 1,000 people or 10,000 people and then, waste all of those leads as they pour out of the bucket or the sieve, or they evaporate into the ether, depending on, how much water, how many leads you're putting into the top of the bucket and how long they sit there in the first place. But what we do have is the capacity to truly deeply understand our people. And the closer you are to your customers, the easier it is to be able to ask the really great questions that go, what are you getting from us? Why is this servicing your needs? How can we do that better? There is one big challenge though, and that is actually marketing spend. Now, it's easy to throw money at advertising. And to be fair, the algorithms that Facebook and LinkedIn have make it much easier to target advertising than it ever was in the past. Look, I know I probably once clicked on a dress site for some kind of item of clothing, and I keep seeing these adverts for beautiful clothing popping up on my LinkedIn, on my Facebook profile. And I'm like, you know what? I love them. I'm never going to buy them, but I love them. So, you got your targeting right. Yay, go you.
Good job.
But they're wasting money on me because they're going to have to pay for my eyeballs, but they're not going to get a conversion out of me. But they don't know that, and they have no way of getting feedback on that, right?
Right.
So the question is, how can we do what the marketing communication models have said should change across time? So let me stop that sentence and that thought again. Marketing communication models started very simply. I think it was the Shannon Weaver model of communication with a sender and a receiver. Sounds simple enough, right? Someone sends a message, someone gets that message. And this, when you were thinking about it in the days of television, you would send, someone would receive. There was no way of, integrating or interacting between that. Then the models of communication got more advanced. They were like, well, send a noise receiver, which also, if the signal is bad on a TV, you're not going to get that message to the receiver. Then they started realizing, wait, hang on a second. It's not just noise between the sender and the receiver. There's actually noise in the sender's head, and there's noise in the receiver's head. And then you actually have to start looking, well, what if we overcome that noise by using different messages, different ways of getting that message there? And then, of course, you've got, there's sender and noise and the message and the receiver and the noise. So then is there a focus on the message? Anyway, the point I'm making is that communication is complex. And the way you reach an audience is complex. And the more you try to reach that audience, by just throwing something at them, by throwing noise at them, the more people turn off. And as I said in the TEDx talk a few years ago already, people are spending money on ad blockers so that they don't get advertising. Like, don't you love that irony?
Exactly.
You're actually spending money not to get adverts, right? And that's the way the world is going. And the problem with marketing is that, especially smaller businesses think, well, the problem is that there aren't enough people who know about me. How can I get more people and more eyeballs? And, it is a challenge. Absolutely. But I was asked doing a strategy session the other day for an organization I work with called Project Displaced, which is a philanthropic organization designed to get Australians back into work. In fact, I'm a member of the board of Project Displaced because they're a non-profit. They don't charge anyone to get the advice about how do we fix your CV and how do we, give you the confidence to get back into work. We were talking about how do you get more people to attend webinars. In fact, their challenge was lots of people drop off of our webinars. And they asked me, what as a marketer would you do? And so my brain is swimming with 100 different tactics that we can use to improve conversion rates and access rates. But they didn't want to necessarily think about all of the elements because they were like, well, can't we spend money on advertising? I'm like, yes, you can. You can spend money on advertising. But where's the money going to come from? We're not even covering our costs as it stands. So how are we going to spend money on advertising? But more importantly, who are we trying to reach? Where are they? What are they likely to be listening to? And more importantly, let's refer to that communication model. Where is the noise in their journey? And it might be that we're not getting enough people attending the webinars because they simply don't know about it. And yes, advertising would help if we could be dropping the messages about why this is good for them in the places where they're hanging out and they're listening, at the times that they're hanging out and listening, which is a massive art. And really, marketers who get this right deserve enormous accolades. Mm-hmm. But we also have to be aware of, are we getting the right messages? And also, is the internal noise in job seekers' heads so loud that they might book up for a webinar and then back out at the last minute because actually they're afraid that someone might ask them a question in the webinar? Mm-hmm. Or that they know they need the help, but they don't ask for the help for whatever psychological reason it is. Often in Australia, it's that, I'm fine, I'm all right, I don't need any help.
Yeah, they could be embarrassed that they don't have a job or they're looking for a job. Yeah.
And so they're embarrassed to ask for help. And so part of the answer to what marketing tactics can we use to get more people on our webinar is, well, how well do we understand our audience? And then how well do we understand where they're hanging out? And only then can you start looking at, if we're going to spend money, if we had the money to spend on advertising, how can we actually make sure that we're not just throwing messages out that no one's going to receive?
That's a big question. You're right. And that's where, you get from the sales side, that's when they're like, well, why are these people receiving these messages? Because this is not our customer. And then you even get to a point where, like, why did they even set an appointment with us? Because they don't even need the product. And, so everybody's wasting everybody's time because you're right. It was just a mistake from the beginning. So I want to switch gears for a minute. I want to ask you, I've gotten this question a lot, well, a few times in the past week or so, and I want to get your take on it. So I have people saying, I need to hire a content marketer, but I don't really think people know what that is. Then they're like, well, is it a copywriter? Do they write my social media? Tell people what a content marketer actually is.
A content marketer can be all of the things you described.
Yeah,
they can be someone who can write copy for your website. They can be someone who writes your LinkedIn profile or even ghost writes LinkedIn articles for you. Effectively, back in the day, a copywriter back in the day, a content marketer was just a marketer before we became specialized. They were the person who did the writing. And then content marketing became a thing, and like many of the sales and marketing tactics that we know, things go around in circles. Mm-hmm. And you go back to the beginning again of what was terribly popular 30 years ago, now has a completely different name, and it's terribly popular again. So account-based marketing is a really big thing at the moment, which is choosing an account and picking marketing tactics that are super relevant and super focused to that specific account. You engage all of the sellers in the journey and you build relationships with them and you give them messaging that is super specifically tailored to them. I love it. I love ABM. But how different is it to having built a genuine, honest relationship with an individual at an account who's going to buy your stuff, which we have been doing since the year dot. So look, I didn't answer your question. Content marketing is about producing messages. that your target audience can consume. Content marketers can be responsible for content that is as tiny as a single word on an advert. Or they can be responsible for producing content that is as long as a book, if that is how you want to reach your audience. Most content marketers tend to have a specialism, that they specialize in the blog post writing length, or they specialize in helping you improve your LinkedIn profile, or they might specialize in video content. And that's a totally different thing. It's a type of content. They might specialize in infographics, or they might specialize in creating interesting combinations of video and audio and words. And, you know, kind of content marketing is a bucket category that anything to do with actual marketing communications that's in there. So actually, if you think about marketing, a job description of marketing communications 15 years ago is probably what content marketing will do.
Right. I would agree with you. Yeah. And it comes down to the messaging, you're right. And it can be anything like I was talking to someone the other day who wants to hire, he said, I want to hire a content marketer just for my Instagram account. I said, so you just want someone to write your Instagram posts? He goes, yep. So I wanted to say, well, you didn't have to call them a content marketer. It sounded all fancy, but yeah, just hire someone to write your posts. But that's what it is. That's what it is. They can fall into that bucket.
Yeah, they can, absolutely. And I think that creating content or employing content marketers who specialize in a certain area is more likely to give you the results that you want, because they understand the nature of the platform that they're writing for. So a content marketer who's writing for Instagram will write differently, even from a content marketer who's writing for Facebook or LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Because the audiences are different, so they have different cultural expectations. The lengths of the content are different. The styles and the tones are slightly different. The way that you use imagery is different. You're far more likely to put great images up on Instagram than on LinkedIn, apart from anything else. If you've written a blog post already and you just want to share that on LinkedIn, you put a hyperlink in and it automatically pulls the image that you have from a different context. So, you know, it's far less important than that.
Yeah.
There is one very important thing to consider when you employ a content marketer, though, and that is whether the tactic that you're using and that the content marketer is producing content for you is actually going to reach the people you want to reach in a way that is going to engage them, that helps you look further up your processes or further down your funnel.
Great point.
What I mean by looking at your processes in your content marketing is this. If you know that your audience is hanging out on Instagram and you employ someone to write Instagram posts for you, that's great, because it means they're more likely to convert. But if you're only using Instagram and your audience is only hanging out on LinkedIn, you've got a problem.
That's a problem.
So actually, the challenge that many small business owners have is that they don't know enough about the different channels. They don't know enough about the different ways of reaching their market. And they often don't know where to invest their effort. I went through this myself. It actually gave me a great gift, because it allowed me the opportunity to really deeply think about what I call the reverse funnel. And now the irony is that great marketers of today don't actually start just at the top of funnel. Today, great marketers start with the bottom of the funnel and work backwards. So the reason that you and I can have a conversation about conversion rates is because I've been educated as a marketer that it doesn't matter if I have 1,000 leads at the top of the funnel if the conversion rates, as we said, are sucky. If the conversion rates are sucky, I could put 10,000 in the top. Sure, I'm going to get more out the bottom, but it just means I might spend 10 or 100 times as much to get those in the top, and we're going to create the same problems, which is that salespeople have leads that no one wants to talk to them, and so it all falls horribly wrong. When marketers use a reverse funnel model, what they actually do by necessity is they go, what does our ideal customer look like? And what are the characteristics that we have that match this ideal customer? Right. Now, if we look at them at this stage, now this is your stage, sales, you're responsible for this. Great. Now we understand this. I'm not going to get involved, or I might if we're talking about social selling, because it actually might help script their LinkedIn profiles or script their messages, then you're way down the funnel there. It's like, okay, but we want to go up from there. So if we need them to get this message, and we've created this piece of content. Well, we need to also make the piece of content available on our website. And if we want to get people to our website, well, maybe we need to go a level up. Maybe we need to consider search engine optimization. By the way, yes, is the answer always. Especially organic search engine optimization. Then you might want to go a level above that and go, well, we want to do paid search, not just organic search. And that's when you start looking at paid. But you're not going to want to start putting paid search out there if your people are not looking for the stuff that you're writing for, because you haven't gone right down to the bottom of the funnel and realized the match between what they want to buy, what you have to sell, and why they're going to buy that.
It's shocking to me. I mean, what you just said just makes complete and utter total sense. Like, find out who your ideal customer is. Yeah, let's do that. And companies don't start with that. You're right. They just like I just said, they cast out, here's this giant net. Let's bring in as many different fish as we can and hand them off to the sales team and see how many fish that they could sell that day. And it really drives me crazy. And it's hopefully the trend is starting to shift a little bit, but I don't see it happening overnight. So that's why people like you and I are having a conversation right now.
Absolutely. The fact that we can have a conversation about a more intelligent way of selling to people also means that we can have a conversation about more authentic ways of engaging with people. Because the more authentic you are in the message that you have to someone, the more they want to hear it. If we're trying to sell windows, and instead of just running random adverts and getting phone numbers and calling everyone in the book and saying, hey, this person is interested, what if we went down a road in a neighborhood and drove around and looked, you know what, that person really needs their windows replaced. That person, I can see that they take great pride in their lawn, but their windows actually look a bit old and tacky. And then work back from that. And go like, well, why do we even need to have a telesale? Or better yet, you've got your telesales people. You want to have a conversation with them to warm them up before the salesperson knocks on their door and says, hey, I want to sell you some windows. Then is there a way to go, right, I'm looking at 562 Worthington Avenue. Who lives at 562 Worthington Avenue? What is their telephone number? Now, let's think about this logically. If I just call them and say your windows suck, they're going to be like, what? No, they don't, even if they do. But if you're able to go, hey, I know that Worthington is an area that is really on the rise. I know that the property prices are increasing. I know that people are going to be wanting to improve their homes because in COVID, let's face it, people are less likely to move out of an area than more likely to spend money in investing. Can I find information that will make me start a drip feed of why people in Worthington Avenue might want to improve and look at their windows? And then we think we're going to send out a flyer on week 1. We're going to send out another flyer on week 2. We're going to put a billboard up on the bus stop on the corner of Lexington Avenue about how beautiful windows can be and get this emotional context of like, oh, I want to be really proud of my property. And then we get their telephone number and go, by the way, have you thought about changing your windows? And they go, oh my goodness, it's as if serendipity, like,
I was just thinking of that.
And then when the salesperson knocks on the door and goes, you know what, I heard you might be interested in replacing your windows. They go, come on in. What kind of coffee would you like?
That's the kind of lead. That's the Glengarry Glen Ross lead right there. All right, we need to switch gears to get to the Ask Allan segment because we are running a little late, but we're flying through this. This has been an amazing conversation. But I did mention, you're a TEDx speaker, Professional Speakers Association, everything. I actually got a speaking question.
Awesome.
This was a few weeks ago, And when I found out you're going to be on my podcast, I dug up the question. So this comes from Ted in Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm pretty sure Ted is not alone in this question. And I think he's speaking for a lot of people who are listening to this podcast. So listen to what he asks. Ted writes, if you ever have a public speaker on, which we do, please ask them some tips on proper preparation for a presentation. I am so nervous when I get in front of people, I freeze up. I need help in this area desperately. That's how he ends it. Thank you for the question, Ted. I feel you. I know it, actually death is in second place and the biggest fears with people. Public speaking is number 1. So you're not alone in this. How would you answer that, Gina, or help him out?
First of all, Ted, congratulations. on recognizing that you have a problem, and congratulations on asking for help.
Yep.
As they say in a lot of organizations which are designed to help people get over addictions, admittal is the first step to recovery. So you've admitted you've got a problem. Yay, you're asking for help. Good. Now let's look at getting you some help. Everyone is going to be nervous when they don't know what they're doing, or they don't feel like they know what they're doing. And even amazing people who have commanded an entire army of people across the world who've made multi-billions of dollars are nervous the first time they do something. I saw something from Richard Branson he posted not too long ago, which was when he started out Virgin Atlantic. It wasn't even a thing. He just had a whole bunch of people standing around on the tarmac after a plane had been cancelled, and he found a plane and hired it and got a whole bunch of people to pay to get onto that plane, and off they flew. Like, he was nervous the first time he did that. Does he look nervous now? No, of course not. So if you're nervous the first time you do a presentation, the first thing to do is to say it's okay. You're allowed to be nervous. But that doesn't help you prepare, except mentally. Mental preparation is, however, one of the most important aspects of any presentation that you're giving. The more prepared you feel, the more confident you're going to look in front of an audience. One of the tips that speakers often give is rehearse, 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 rehearse. One of the things that I had to do for a TEDx speech was rehearse, 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 rehearse. Know it, rehearse it until you can almost recite it in your sleep. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come across as the most brilliant presentation. But there are different ways of rehearsing, and here's the good news. You can either write a script, learn that script word for word, and get really flustered when you forget what your words are, or you can cheat. And I'm a big fan of this, which is actually give yourself the tips or the reminders that you need during your presentation to be able to anchor yourself. So I'm the kind of speaker who forgets what I'm saying halfway through a presentation. In fact, if you watch the TEDx speech really carefully and you spot the moment where I completely forgot what I was saying, get hold of me, because I will send you a free copy of my book, because it has happened, right? But it's very hard to tell. And the reason it's very hard to tell is because I didn't just rehearse exactly what I was going to say word for word. I rehearsed the transitions. And I rehearsed the associations of what I was saying with that message with the slide. So people often talk about death by PowerPoint, and it is possible to just put all of your content on the slide, and then you don't have to remember anything because it's all right there, and you just click when you reach the end of the slide. I think this is boring. It's not going to help anyone, except it might help you, because then you don't have to worry about forgetting anything. But if you can use a slide that actually encapsulates your entire concept in that slide, that's fantastic, but you have to be aware of the transitions between one slide and another. And that's what catches me out. Even as a dancer, because I did ballet my whole life, I would learn a piece and the teachers would teach you a piece. And like, okay, we're doing this and then stop. And we're doing this and then this and then this. But if they don't teach you to connect part A with part B, I could still forget what I was doing. And so with slides, no matter what the message is on slide 1 and slide 2, make sure that you can make that segue between the two slides. And I would say, in some ways, actually be more comfortable with the transitions. And here's one extra special tip that deals with 3 different elements. The first one is the power of 3. The second is tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. And the third is a big secret. No one else knows what you're going to say. So if you forget what you said and you say something else completely entirely different, no one will ever know. So first thing is the power of 3. Tell people things in 3s. It just makes it easier to remember. I don't know why, but it works.
It's the way the brain works.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's that's a whole chapter in my book, actually.
Awesome. Well, there we go. Nice.
Yep.
Nice segue there. So the power of 3 works in that it's the way the brain works, as you say. It helps people with repetition. And the second part of that advice was actually Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them, which ironically is about the power of three, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
If you tell people what to expect, then they are looking forward to what you're going to tell them. Then you lay that out, and then you wrap it up again with going, and this is what I told you.
Mm-hmm.
Power of three, beginning, middle, end. People crave stories. They crave a resolution to a story. And if you get flustered and you completely forget what you're saying, ask the audience, go, now, remember when we began, I told you what I was going to tell you. Can anyone in the audience tell me what they said, what I said I was going to tell them? And some bright spark will pipe up and go, you said you were going to talk about X. And you're like, you're absolutely right. I did. And I haven't covered that yet. So talk about it. And there you go. So what I've just said was, boom, boom, boom. And as so-and-so in the audience said, you know, I was going to talk about that and I talked about that. And now you know. So tell them what you can tell them. Tell them what you told them. Power of three. And no one else ever knows what you're going to say until you've said it.
That's brilliant, brilliant advice. And I'm going to add one more thing to it because I've done quite a bit of public speaking. And once I learned this, it in every aspect, it kind of changes everything you do. Nobody cares to the level that you think they do about what you look like or what you sound like. I learned this with my podcast. I actually taught myself this when I was talking to my 17-year-old daughter once this past summer. She was so upset about what she looked like when she was wearing, you know, typical, you know, teenage boy or girl, but they just worry about what they look like. And I said to her, I said, how many times have you seen someone walk down the street in this crazy, wild, ridiculous looking outfit? What do you do? She goes, nothing. I said, yeah, you look at them and you walk away, right? Okay, so I'm sure he clearly didn't care what he looked like this morning, but you didn't care either. So just dress the way you want and be yourself. And I've had so many people say you have a great podcast voice. I think my voice is terrible. I really do. I don't like my voice at all. But people are going to perceive you completely differently than you think they're perceiving you. So as bad as you think you look, you're not nearly as bad. Just trust me on that. People think you're a lot better than you think you are.
That leads me to another tip that I think will be helpful. I was listening to a song just the other day, What's Wrong with Being Confident? And it was effectively an anthem for self-expression, but the message was very clear, which is, if you look and act and feel confident, no one knows that you're trembling inside. And there is an element of fake it till you make it in speaking, simply because, and I'll illustrate this with a lesson in physiology. If you go on stage like this, what do people think?
People who are listening, she's got her head bowed forward.
Oh, sorry, I forget that people can't see me on video necessarily. Yeah, if you're walking into a room where your shoulders are forward and your head is down and your chest is crunched, they're going to see you as a lack, an unconfident, and really not very well prepared speaker. Mm-hmm. You can be the best prepared speaker in the world, but they won't believe it because your body language is not telling them to believe it. Mm-hmm. The alternative is if you lift up your chin, you drop your shoulders, you put your shoulders back, you stick your chest out. It's almost impossible not to feel confidence. And there is actually science that demonstrates that when you put yourself into a confident body posture, the physiology actually kicks off elements of your body to say, hey, I feel confident, even if you don't.
Yeah. The same science says it's impossible to feel bad about yourself if you raise your arms above your head in the victory. It's literally like, if you want to feel better instantly, raise your arms above your head. And I think it actually releases some sort of chemicals that make dopamine or something that makes you feel better. So, all right. Well, this has been amazing, chock full of fantastic information. We're approaching almost 50 minutes, so we're probably going to have to wrap this up. But Gina, any other final words, any final thoughts before we sign off? And then I want to have you tell people how they can find you and find your book. So, but any final advice for anyone that have been listening tonight?
When it comes to feeling confident about speaking or feeling confident about relationships between sales and marketing, or feeling confident about the marketing you're doing, the real key is being able to take yourself out of the equation as much as possible. and to think about the other person who's involved. When you are a great speaker, you're a great speaker because you have a true deep passion for trying to reach your audience. And your audience is more important than you. The same thing goes with sales and marketing. If you have a true deep passion for making sure that people are really proud of the home that they live in because their windows are sparkling and perfect, then that will shine and show through in the way that you interact with customers. You can fake that. I don't believe you should fake that. I mean, in the case of public speaking, it's often helpful to just fake it till you make it, to fool your body to overcome those nerves. Mm-hmm. But in the case of speaking with an audience, just listen first. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth in order that we might listen twice as often as we speak.
And on that note, how do people get your book? How do people contact you if they want to say hello? What's the best way to say hi to Gina Ballarina?
You can get copies of my book on Amazon. It's right there. Buy as many copies as you like. I'm a bit far away in Australia to sign copies in the US. But you can always send me a message to say, hey, Gina,
it is called
I got your book.
The Secret Army, Leadership, Marketing, and the Power of People. There it is. It's white with black and red text on it. Secret Army by Gina Ballarin. Look her up on LinkedIn. Gina.Ballarin@Verballistics is her email. And she's pretty easy to find, and she's awesome to talk to. So, Gina, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. It's been a real pleasure. And maybe someday, if I ever make it to Australia, we'll have a glass of Chablis together. So
absolutely.
Cheers to you. Thank you for being on. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us on episode 49 of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Remember to send your question into the Ask Allan segment. And just like Ted in Birmingham, Alabama, you will get a signed copy of my book. That's it for tonight, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We will see you again next time.